Hello, welcome to episode 415 of the Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum. If you're playing this back at a later time, welcome. Or if you're with us live on YouTube or Zoom, we're trying something new this week. Everybody gets to participate by submitting your questions on Slido instead of Discord. And I need to make an adjustment. Thank you. Okay, so we're trying something new this week for Q&A. We're going to be using a product called Slido, and I'll get to that in just a minute. Let's see. So we will... let's actually look at that right now. So you'll see a window on your screen that shows the Slido logon. There's a QR code as well as a URL. So if you can take a picture of the QR code with your phone and log in that way, or you can use the URL to log in with on a browser with your desktop or laptop computer. And it'll be very interesting. So everybody, whether you're on Zoom or YouTube, will get to participate. And we'll go through that in just a minute and give everybody instructions on what to expect. We will be using Discord if you want to do any kind of comments or chats, as we normally do. But we're going to be taking questions on Slido. So let's actually go to the first question, the first poll, and you will see this question up on your screen. It says, where are you watching from? So you will be able to enter in your location, and as it gets populated, this is kind of a cool thing. You'll see this is a word cloud, so you'll see the font type get bigger or smaller. The bigger the font, the more frequent the answer. So we have a lot of people watching from home. Thank you very much. So I will that will be up for a bit, so everybody can contribute to that. And if you're watching us live on Zoom, you'll be able to participate in our post-show where we can have a casual conversation with Q&A and open mics. That'll be after we close the formal part of the show. And you can find registration information for Zoom and Discord on our Facebook page, the Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum. So what we are is a growing international and multi-faith community. That is all of you, of course, representing congregations of all sizes. At the technical level that we talk, denomination is transparent. Really doesn't matter what your faith, what your inclination is. Everybody needs to communicate with our congregations. We want to do it well, and we're all here to help each other out. And we're but just one in a related set of communities. People on our panel participate in a number of shows in addition to ours. Leo on our panel here does a show that is devoted mostly to Jewish worship. And Leo is based out of London, but his show is seen all over the world. What have you got planned for us coming up, Leo?
So I don't have a show this weekend because it's a Jewish festival of Shavuot. But what I do have is the following next Thursday. I'm on the I've got to remember the name. Is the Worship Summit Live. So I put the link to that in the Discord chat for everybody. Worship Summit Live is an international, another event, a different thing, which is run by the people at Streaming Geeks. And So I'm actually a speaker on that one, and I'll be covering sort of a whistle stop tour of all the stuff that I've done in one synagogue and how I've moved it from where it was to where it is. And it's amazing how fast some of the changes happened.
Really? Wow. Well, that's really interesting. I've been kind of following that a little bit, and it seems like it's going to be a worthwhile conference. And that brings us to our second bit of information. We have educational opportunities as well as this show. On Monday afternoons at 3 o'clock Eastern Time, Mark Plukas here on our panel conducts an audio instructional show going through analog and digital mixers, microphones, and other things. How far have you gotten so far, and where are we going, Mark?
We've covered analog mixing desks. We've covered microphone types and their applications. We've covered processing, both dynamics and special effects. And we did an overview of digital mixing consoles. I think the next one I'm thinking of introducing what an audio digital signal processor can do, either in conjunction with or as opposed to a live mixing desk. That's my next thought. I haven't fully fleshed it out. Otherwise, it'll be more question and answer and conversation about mixing techniques.
All right. Well, so audio mixing, that's great. Everybody needs to up their game for audio mixing. I don't know anybody, even professional, who doesn't need to up their game or doesn't want to up their game for audio mixing. So that's really good. And we're going to move on to our next poll. So let's take that one down. And there we go. And look at the next poll.
Do you see it? Should be there.
It's there and it's on the screen in front of you. Yep.
Yeah, actually, so this is the question of the day. In your new role as a webcasting tech, how much more important will better planning communications be with your worship team? So it'll be a lot more important, not really, or not at all. So as we start to do live streaming, and you got to be pointing cameras in different places and setting up microphones because everything needs to be mic'd. Do you need to know in advance what to expect on Sunday morning, and how would you like to be, kept in the loop about all of that? How important will communications with your worship team be, right? To be prepared for come Sunday morning. All right. Now, there are other shows that are associated with this one that are similar to this one with different kinds of focuses. There's a show that is focused on educators for public education, private education. That happens on Saturday afternoons or mornings, depending on where you're located. And that information is in the Discord under a channel called Related Shows. And it's this kind of interaction with our shows, our Discords, our Q&A interaction, the opportunity to have 24/7 discussions, even impromptu voice and video chats anytime during the week. That really makes this whole experience work, right? Because this is not a broadcast, this is not a one-way information sharing thing, and this is an opportunity to really engage, not unlike, the goal, part of the goal of services is to engage people in conversation and interaction. So that's really what makes this work. And so that's why we provide the Discord for that kind of interaction. So take advantage of it. You'll also find show agendas, past show recordings, and special announcements. And you'll be able to see what conversations. There were a couple of good questions that came up just today on the Discord. So check it out. And so, there's a channel for live chats and comments there as well. So during the show, and we check on it, and we kind of answer, and we and we'll work with you. So we have another poll, right, that I want to put up. So how interested are you in training on recording and editing software? So we have the opportunity to, during services, to record everything that you have, video and audio, and even record audio in such a way that you can go back and re-edit it to correct mistakes, clean up the balance, do lots of other things. So we can provide some of that training. It'll be really important to have later on down the road. If it's something that you're interested in, let us know. The two answers we provided is Audacity, which is a popular free program. But if you'd like instruction on a more robust program, let us know that as well. There's quite a bit of interest. Thank you very much. Okay, so I want to thank all of our panelists today. We have Joanna Lovell in Pennsylvania, Jay Paul in Maryland, Mark Plukas in Massachusetts, Leo Mindell in London, and Rob McKinnon in Florida. Thank you very much for being here. And I know that there are a lot of other people out there who are not only very knowledgeable, but dedicated to working or volunteering with your worship technology. And this is an open panel. We invite people to come on. It's not just us. If you think you can contribute to the conversation, add a different point of view, you're welcome to come on the show and be with us and work with us. All you need to do is get here an hour early, between 6 and 6:30 Eastern Time. The waiting room will be open. You can come and join us and be on the panel. Now, during the show, all of our attendees will have their microphones muted, and questions will come through the Slido, and we'll take it from there. Now, at the end of the show, when we close out the recordings, we'll have an open Q&A where people will be able to open your microphones and we can have a discussion. That's always a lot of fun. All right, so
Marty,
today,
can
yes.
I ask a favor? So we have a lot of interest in Audacity, but I would love people to email me so that I can email you an invitation to the meeting that I will be holding for Audacity training. So my email address is jlovell3348@gmail.com. And so all those people that are interested, 64% of you need to send me an email. Thank you.
All right. Great. Okay, today we're doing our third needs assessment interview with the First Unitarian Universalist Church of St. Louis, Missouri. Joining us today is the Reverend Kim Mason and her tech team. Welcome, very welcome. Thank you for coming. Kim, would you like to introduce the rest of your team for us?
Sure. Thanks for having us. This is an exciting step in our process. I am here with several different folks. Nick Pendergrass, who is an engineer and all-around sound technician. He's done a lot of work on our sound system already and is interested in helping our spaces be more resonant in positive ways. I'm also here with Claire Weichselbaum, who helped us get online at the beginning of the pandemic and still does a lot of our video projects. And Damian Rivas, who is our remote Sunday morning tech host. He does all of our live Zoom meetings and manages our Sunday worship, puts together our slide deck, things like that.
Great. So let's get those people in as co-hosts. Leo has the con.
I can't add them and click on the button at the same time. So I've added Claire. Sorry. One day they'll come out with a way of managing so you could do all of these things at once on this.
I know,
so I'm
right?
just adding them all in. I'm going to have to. Who am I missing?
Damien.
I couldn't find him because I don't think his camera's on. That's why I couldn't find him. Can't add a non-camera.
All right. So Damien, let's ask you to turn your camera on so that you can join us. Kim, while we're doing that, tell us a little bit about your church and the building's history.
So First Unitarian is the first congregation west of the Mississippi. It was founded in 1835. It's had several locations in the city of St. Louis and is currently in a building. There was a spinoff congregation. So we were founded as the Church of the Messiah, and we were founded by William Greenleaf Eliot, and then they spun off a congregation called Church of the Unity. This building that you're seeing right now is our current building, and it was built in 1917 as a site of the Church of the Unity. And so both churches had multiple locations, and in 1934, they re-merged to become the First Unitarian Church of St. Louis. And so we've been in our current location for a little over 100 years. And we have two additional wings on the building. One is an educational wing that was built in the late 1950s, and then a chapel, a modern chapel that was built in 2001. But our worship happens in our 100-year-old sanctuary, which is very German Gothic, lots of dark wood, brick walls, brick archways, lots of hard surfaces for sound to bounce off of. And not a lot of technology in this building. It is incredibly hard to get any kind of signal into this section of the building because there are very thick stone walls. So we have Wi-Fi boosters everywhere.
It's a beautiful space, I got to say. And look at that organ.
That organ was put in the late 90s. There was an organ originally that was taken out, and then they put in a new organ. You can see.
And I think this is the old organ, isn't it?
Hmm?
I found this picture online.
Nice.
And this appears to be a different organ.
Yep. So there's a different organ. And what you also see in that picture that is present now is a mural. There was a mural that was put up at the end of World War I or II, I can't recall which actually, to commemorate the soldiers that served during the war. And so you can see, not very well in this picture, but there's a mural of trees at the back of the sanctuary now, and there are 3 trees and 4 shadows. Or 4 trees and 3 shadows. I can't ever remember. I'm not looking at it really closely. But there's a different number of trees and shadows to indicate as a commemoration of the folks who did not return from the war.
All right. And here's a picture of the sanctuary from the chancel.
Yep.
So it's a nice big space. Anybody know what the dimensions of this space are?
I do not. Nick, did you do any measuring when you were in there?
You're muted, Nick.
Okay.
Hey.
I used to know, but it's about 80 feet to the back wall from the stage front. And it's 24 feet across the stage. And something that Reverend Kim mentioned was that the technology in the building is very limited. There is no Ethernet cable into that building.
Oh.
And Wi-Fi is running a whole 38 megabits per second near the front of the stage. And the Wi-Fi is in the other building coming through those walls.
Well, that's certainly something that will will have to be addressed.
Nick, you said across the stage. Is that from proscenium to proscenium, or is that the total width of the room?
No, that's from arch to arch.
Okay, so the room itself is probably around 60 feet wide?
Yeah, 50 or so.
Okay,
Right.
thanks.
But it is an echo chamber. If you clap your hands in there, it goes on and on and on.
Hmm.
The lighting is also very yellow because the windows, all of the windows in the sanctuary are wavy yellow glass.
Yeah, we can see some of that yellow tint in some of these pictures. So let's get to know you a little better, though, because it's not just the building that we're interested in, it's the congregation and the church. What can you tell us about the church's mission statement?
We are about to have a new mission statement, actually. And oh goodness, now I have to pull it up because I don't have it memorized yet.
That's okay.
The new mission statement is essentially that that we are a welcoming congregation, encouraging lives of loving kindness and interacting in our community through advancing justice, nurturing spirituality, and building connections, or something along that line. We're voting. We're literally voting on the new mission statement on Saturday. So.
And I did not know that when I asked that question. So tell me a little bit about what have you learned about your creative capabilities during this 15 months of virtual worship?
For my creative capabilities, I love being able to try new things. I like being experimental and experiential in worship. And I love being able to use video capabilities. I had already done it a couple times. So I'm new to the congregation. I've only been in the congregation for 2 years. I'm just finishing up 2 years with them. And so we were just getting to know each other when the pandemic hit. I had already on a couple different occasions had a portable projector and a portable screen set up so that I could use clips. Like I did a service on The Good Place. And so I was like, we have to have a clip of The Good Place so that you can understand why this show is so great. So, had to schlep all the equipment into the sanctuary, set it up, figure out how to plug it into the sound system, et cetera. And so I'm new to ministry, and I'm new to the congregation. And so some of my ministry has been really shaped by being a pandemic minister. I've been their minister online longer than I was their minister in real life.
If you wouldn't mind a review from somebody who watches her on the stage, Reverend Kim is enormously creative, uses technology for everything it's worth that she can in the sanctuary. She moves around the stage a lot. If she has a chance, she will go out into the congregation and walk around and talk. So it will stress the technology a bit to be able to follow her around and get the sound right and the video right.
I have been chained to the pulpit in this sanctuary. Because I can't move without there being any. I have given some significant feedback by moving around.
Right. Okay. Yep. I heard about that. We'll get to that. So now as we are preparing to move back and welcome people back into the sanctuary, how critical do you see webcasting being to the church's mission?
I think it's absolutely our future for a variety of reasons. I mean, we don't know how many people will feel comfortable coming back to the sanctuary, and we want those folks to remain connected to the congregation. And we also don't know if there's going to be intermittent flare-ups or times when, as we continue to offer services if we may have to say like, you know, capacity is limited right now, or if people will say, you know, we're having a hot spot of COVID, so we're going to stay home. We've also garnered a small but growing number of folks who are watching our services from out of our geographic area, whether they are new attendees or former members. And so we'd like those folks to stay connected as well.
Great. Okay. So let's take a look at your sanctuary again. I got to find the right button to push. There we go. Tell us about the chancel and where things happen and or where you plan for them to happen. I see. Is that the organ console directly in front, or is that a table?
So what you're looking in this picture, that is an older picture of our sanctuary. That table right now is on the chancel against the back wall. Mm-hmm. So the chancel was originally built so that the choir sat in the back against the back wall. But what the choir found, and Nick can speak to this too, is that those brick arches swallow the sound of the choir. So it can't get out, and the choir also has a hard time hearing itself. And so the choir no longer sits back there, and that altar is now up there on the chancel. However, we're discussing the possibility of putting the choir back up there. Oh, that's a great picture, yeah. So we're discussing the possibility of putting the choir back up on the chancel so that they are away from the rest of the congregation for singing purposes. We're talking about having the choir with everybody vaccinated, provide all the music, and asking folks not to sing hymns and just have our choir do all the music. The organ console is right behind this pillar that in the picture is on the left. So it's just a part of the organ. And then the piano is down on the floor on the left side of this picture. You can't see it.
Yeah, but I think I see the cover, the piano cover right here.
Yep.
Right, and the organ console is behind the pillar.
Yep.
I've seen other pictures of it. I can find a picture. I can find a picture of that. And what about other things that happen on the chancel, like story time or other music performances?
Not usually. Almost all of the activity actually happens down on the floor. So when they do the story for all ages, they invite the children to sit in the front row of the pews, and whoever's doing the story often stands there in front of those pews. And then the choir has traditionally, literally right there on the floor is where they will stand. And that's the organ console. Mm-hmm. This picture is probably easily 10 to 20 years old. I'm looking at where those chairs are arranged. That's when the choir was sitting up there on the chancel. The choir usually stands down on the floor so that they can hear themselves and that the rest of the congregation can hear them. And they gather around the piano in this formation that's kind of clumped together. Yeah, literally right there in that corner is where they will stand along the wall and then up on the chancel just a little bit. It's a very awkward arrangement, and we're planning to change it when we go back to the sanctuary.
Okay. So with the choir up there.
No, the choir's on the floor, she said, Marty. Behind
but we're discussing putting them on the chancel again.
Gotcha.
We can put in monitor speakers.
Right. So if the choir are up on the chancel and the organ pipes are right there.
Here's a question. Does the choir usually sing to the piano, or do they sing to the organ? Or both?
Oh, they usually sing to the piano.
Never to the organ. The organ overwhelms everything.
So the organ is just like prelude, postlude kind of stuff?
It is. Okay. We always do a prelude and postlude with the organ, and we will occasionally do a hymn with the organ depending on what the hymn is.
Okay. If it's like a super traditional, like Easter Sunday one.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, great. That answers that
That's helpful,
question.
Marty. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to other questions that I had. So internet service. So you said there is no internet service in the sanctuary. That will need to be addressed. And at the same time, you'll want to look at your network configuration on the premises. So your router, your switches, that you should have somebody look at that to make sure that you have enough internet bandwidth for streaming and for all other functions that might be happening at the same time. And that, there's sufficient priorities for different kinds of traffic to make sure that all of your streaming traffic has the highest priority.
A quick question, which I was going to reserve for later, but now you're on it. What kind of upload speed do we need for streaming service? It depends on what resolution streaming you're going to put out, how many streams you're going to put out. It's too early to answer this question, but in a general sense, I can say that for a 1080p stream, you should have at least 10 megabits per second reserved exclusively for streaming. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's going out. That's
Not
for
all
one
internet
stream
services
going
have
out.
to give you upload speed.
Yeah.
We're working that. We're concerned with it.
Yeah. And that's something that,
So what's your current, Nick, you mentioned about download speed. Do you know what your current upload speed is on there quickly or not?
No, I don't. I just got the name of the provider today and the plan we've got, and I just haven't had time to go after them and find out exactly what the upload speed is.
Okay.
No.
I don't know exactly, but I will say, as Nick mentioned, currently the only way to get internet in the sanctuary is the very, very weak Wi-Fi connection. So whatever those speeds are that we're currently getting over Wi-Fi are probably fairly irrelevant. I had run a 200-foot Ethernet cable all the way down to the office, up the stairs into the sanctuary when we initially just kind of threw together streaming in there at the beginning of the pandemic before we switched to everybody streaming from home. And I don't remember, this is over a year ago now, so I don't remember what kind of upload and download speeds we were getting, but they were certainly sufficient for,
the big thing will be you'll need to find some way of permanently getting that cable in. And
absolutely
the rest will follow.
Yes.
Discussing wireless speeds are not really gonna help.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any questions coming in from the audience yet?
Nope.
I'm just going to put the link up again now that it's in question mode. Mm-hmm. So if you can click, point your phone at that, or go to slido.com and Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum is the thing. You can then enter your questions. Okay.
I'm just trying to pull up a document, a picture here that, not that one, this one. All right, so from the documentation that you provided us, I see that you have a Bose sound system.
Yep.
And
are we supposed to be seeing a document, Marty?
Not yet.
Okay.
There's a Bose amplifier, a Bose processor, and Bose loudspeakers. Mm-hmm. And I see there are 2 loudspeakers mounted up in the rafters I can.
That was my first question. Can you to clarify? Because I couldn't work it out by the pictures. Could you tell me, is there two loudspeakers? Are they on the two beams, or is it? I could work out one, but I couldn't work out if there were two in a row.
They are one after another, first beam, second beam.
Thank you. That's what we thought. Sorry, Nick.
12 milliseconds apart.
And here's a picture of that loudspeaker. It's not quite 2 feet in length. And I pulled up the specs for that. And so this is considered a utility speaker, small format, foreground and fill loudspeaker. It's a two-way point source designed for foreground music, under balcony, zone fill, and vocal range floor monitor applications. So I have to ask, how happy are you with the sound you're getting in the sanctuary at this point?
Could I volunteer that I'm unhappy with it?
I sort of gathered that.
Yeah, it's your sanctuary. Say whatever you want, man.
That came through in the document that you were maybe not so happy with it, but I was.
We've had We've had three audio people come in and say, "Doggone, those are placed in the wrong spot. They're pointed at the floor, and it hits the floor, bounces to that big old ceiling, and back to what we call the hulk and back, which is all that brick wall and wood. And so it's not doing a very good job."
Okay, good. No, well, I'm glad we agree, because that was our impression, that this was just not the right choice of loudspeaker for this application. And you mentioned that the second one you have turned off because it just sounded worse than one speaker alone.
It did. And it was a surprise, although I got in there with a spectrum and network analyzer and looked at the reflections.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see that it was just loading a reverberant room with more reverb.
Mm.
So you get, not that this is the answer to anything, but you mentioned a 12 millisecond differential. Were you timing the second speaker to the first speaker?
Yes.
And what I looked for and didn't see in the DSP file was, and maybe it's hidden in the amplifier, whether there's an actual delay line inserted anywhere in the signal path to actually do the timing.
There is, but experimenting with it can make things worse depending upon where you are in the sanctuary, because there's a large zone in there that's hearing both speakers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's almost always going to be some overlap between a primary speaker and any kind of a delayed speaker.
Yeah.
I'm not insinuating that the timing is the major issue here. Just it was a point of interest whether or not there was any compensation in that. The size of the speaker in terms of and capability to deliver low frequency directivity, which it has none, is the issue, and probably the location as well.
Jay, can you mentioned the word DSP. Could you just explain what that is?
That's the digital signal processing, what Marty had it up on screen just a moment ago. And that's a piece of, in this case, it's a piece of hardware. There's a processor that's made by Bose. It's identified in the document, and that screen is showing the signal flow of what's happening inside of the box. So the left-hand side of the screen are inputs. In the center is a mixer. There are also a couple of generators in the signal in the system. and then the output of the mixer. And again, I may be getting ahead of where Marty wants to be, but it just seemed a little strange to me that we have one output of the mixer going to another router, and I'm not quite sure what's happening at the output of router one, what's in between that and the next mixer. So that could be a separate conversation. I'm curious to what it is, but I'm not necessarily offering that, reprogramming this or re-aiming the speakers you already have are an answer to delivering intelligibility, clarity, freedom from feedback in your very live sanctuary with very large reflecting surfaces.
DSPs are incredibly flexible devices. We can make them do really whatever we need to make them do. They could be input processors, they could be output processors, they could be mixers, they can, provide protection from blowing up loudspeakers. They can be automatic mic mixers. They can do pretty much anything we want them to do with very few limits. That said, it takes a great deal of care to program these things to do what we need them to do correctly and safely, and even more importantly, to provide an interface, a user interface that is easy to use and intuitive to use. So from what I see in the documentation, Nick, you have a tablet or a device that has a screen that you use to control this, and that's what you're using to adjust microphone levels and such. Is that right? Can you tell us more about that?
It is. It's an iPad, and we have a volunteer in back who selects microphones when needed and also controls level. And the iPad, with limited programming we've done, we can put sliders and buttons on there using Control Space remote software from Bose. But it invariably ends up being confusing to a volunteer who's even seen it 3 times. And I would really like a better graphical control with a bigger screen. And if we have a control station downstairs or in the closet with someone actually doing this, they will need a bigger screen. Doing this live is tough.
Okay. All right.
I did notice that you have a Bose control unit as well. Does that not get used very often to?
It's so limited. It's about 6 feet. It's 6 feet behind the pulpit.
Oh.
And it takes some. It's just some buttons that you turn. So for somebody to walk in, want the pulpit mic on, it works great because it's right there and the lights are blinking. But for real-time control, no way.
No. Okay.
To quick jump in, Nick, maybe I'm just not aware of it, but in the recent past, pre-pandemic, I don't know that anyone ever was doing any live adjustment of audio levels.
Yeah, we were.
So every Sunday?
You try to keep this kind of secret and back. You don't want to make the technology the story. And
yeah, okay. I know services, at least that I was involved in, it was often the settings
forget it.
They were, yes. And yeah.
Which,
so,
never mind, go ahead.
Much of the,
yeah.
You're right. Much of the time you can depend upon a person with a wireless mic to turn it on and then turn it off. And now this person in back doesn't have to worry too much about that. So some of it is set the levels and then forget them.
But muting,
great.
muting
Okay,
mics that are not being in use is also very important to do.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, that answers that question. Moving on, you have an FM hearing assistance system. How well is that working?
Not really well.
After we fixed it, it's working pretty well, actually.
Okay.
But for a while, it was crippled.
Okay.
Turns out
So
one wire will do that.
I will say we have gotten feedback that folks who were using that system in the sanctuary have a much easier time now that we're on Zoom. I mean, maybe that's a given, but it wasn't working well enough, at least, that they didn't see a massive improvement when they started listening from home.
All right. Well, there are a couple of reasons that, people might not have been happy with it. Either the FM, the transmission part of it is not working well, or it's not getting good quality audio to transmit in the first place. And that could be a result of poor microphone placement or poor level control going into it. So it is a good system. I know that, provided that there's no radio interference issues. It should perform rather well, also provided that the antenna is in a good place. Given those thick walls with all that brick, the antenna needs to be in a place where where the radio waves can actually get out through the sanctuary. So that can be evaluated a little bit later on. I see that you have 4 microphones. 2 of them look to be very nice microphones. 2 of them look to be rather low-end microphones. You have a couple of wireless mics that were very economical purchases, I'm sure. And I see that there's a recessed floor box with 4 inputs, and that's located under the lectern, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so I've heard that there are occasionally some feedback issues. Is that, do you get feedback issues from the Pulpit microphone?
No,
No, okay.
it's when we're wearing the wireless microphones.
Wireless microphones and you're moving around.
Correct.
All right.
Well,
And-
So,
we were just beginning to experiment with feedback suppression when COVID hit.
what were you using to do that?
The Bose has some pretty fancy things. One of the things that was on that diagram that I think confused people a little was going out to presets. So there were several presets set up. You turn the gain up until you hear the room start to ring, and that feedback suppressor would go right after it. Now I know what the dominant mode of the room is, and that was one of the presets. Reluctant to just unleash feedback control until I'm comfortable with it when somebody's playing a flute, because it doesn't know the difference between that and feedback.
Right. Yeah, the difference between feedback and a pure tone from an instrument is very small. Okay, so I'm trying to move this along because we've got a lot to go through. You also want to do
Marty, can I just a microphone question?
Yes, absolutely.
What is, so the wireless microphones specifically, what are they? Are they lavaliers or are they head-worn microphones, the wireless?
So I went out and bought a head-worn microphone
Okay.
because the lavalier wasn't picking me up.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got one that's a lavalier and one that's head-worn.
Okay, and are those only used one at a time, or do you use them in conjunction with each other? Do you have somebody else on a lav while you're on the head-worn microphone?
Yeah, oftentimes the director of religious education would be on the other one because they would go down from the chancel onto the floor to do the story with the children.
Okay, I see. So you've got the BLX4 with the choice of the Shure 185 headset mic or the 235s. Okay, thank you.
All right. I see that you currently you have an audio link to your fellowship hall.
Yes.
So people can hear what's happening in the sanctuary while they're in the fellowship hall. and you want to expand that for video, and you also want to expand that to other places in the church, the nursery, the classroom, the lobby, and an overflow area perhaps. Okay, good to know. We'll take that into consideration. So there are currently no cameras and no screens in the sanctuary, and you don't do, and there's no ASL, there's no American Sign Language interpretation. Is that something that you're considering?
It is not, it has not been proposed and is not
Okay.
planned at the moment.
All right. And for virtual services, you're using video editing software like iMovie and Final Cut Pro. And for audio, you're using Audacity and GarageBand. All right, good. So when it comes to cameras, the first question that we have to ask is, what's your sensitivity to, considering that this is a long-term prospect, what's your sensitivity to mounting cameras permanently in the sanctuary on walls or from the beams overhead?
I'm for that. We already have some concerns that if they're not permanently mounted, they might walk away during a rental. We do get quite a few wedding rentals in our building. And we have, various other groups that come in. And so our administrator has already expressed some concerns. Could we have things permanently mounted? And we have no problem with that. The real question would be the aesthetics. And frankly, I think permanently mounted in the sanctuary would be a nicer aesthetic than just, a tripod in the middle of the floor.
So when you talk about the aesthetics, are there any sort of things where you say, not this wall, not that beam, not something, or is it, is there anything that's sort of out of bounds?
I think the only thing that is really kind of out of bounds would be, messing with the organ. People, we have all kinds of, you can't see a lot of it. We have like various congregational mementos hanging in different places in the sanctuary. But I think if they had appropriate homes to go to in other parts of the building, they could be moved. But there's nothing as far as like a surface that you can't put something on.
Okay. And then the second thing, as well as mounting, putting the camera there is one thing. The second thing is the camera needs wires to it. Mm-hmm. And, you already talked about the fact that, Claire says she dragged a cable through, and Nick's mentioned the fact that it's wireless or wireless up until now. Mm-hmm. Is there sensible ways that we can, that cables can be run to certain things?
The answer to that, I think, is yes, but it is relatively labor intensive to snake it around so that it's not objectionable. It turns out we have radiators in the building, and so there are ways to get through the floor by following a radiator pipe. We've had.
I'm just bringing out this picture that Marty's got up. Let us know, Kim, how old is this picture, or one of you?
This picture was taken probably in February or March. So this is
okay. So this is a good example of what the current layout. Thank you.
So the radiators, you can see them are under the windows.
Okay.
And
yes. Mm-hmm.
The pipes go through to Fellowship Hall below, and there doesn't appear to be any problem running wires across the ceiling in Fellowship Hall because all the pipes are going across the ceiling.
Okay, good.
And then where you've got those, what look like lights on the wall, am I right?
Yep, those are sconces.
Okay. Is there, out of interest, if they're running inducting the cable behind there, or
are they electric or are they gas?
They are electric, but who knows where the wires are going?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think I want to know.
So I want to point out these lighting pendants. I've run into these before, and at a Presbyterian church that I was working on. You see the bottom of this light here? There's a circular grill, and in that church that I was working on, there were loudspeakers in these pendants, and I didn't know it.
That's sweet.
And so, I'm working on tuning up the room, and I'm working on feedback, and I'm working on equalization, and there's all this
Extra sound.
strange stuff going on in the room, and I find it took me almost a year to figure out that there were loudspeakers in those things. They're driving me batty. Now, do you know if there are speakers in those in yours?
There are not. Thank goodness.
All right.
You look up in every one of these, there's a 300-watt incandescent bulb in there, glowing orange. And it is a heat generator and very inefficient.
Yeah, I'm sure.
This will be fixed.
But I got to say, though, that having loudspeakers in overhead, we put loudspeakers in ceilings all the time over people's heads, in conference rooms and stuff. And I got to say, this was a novel idea, at least for the time, because it puts the loudspeakers closer to where people actually are, and they're firing straight down. It was a novel idea. And had I known that at the time, I might have been able to take advantage of that opportunity for fill speakers at least. But there are complications, but it's certainly worth doing. But okay, good to know that that's not an issue here. Great.
Leo,
okay.
could you promote Jay again, please?
What's that?
I was asking Leo to promote Jay again. He had to move to a different room.
And okay, lighting. So so there's that lighting, and you were talking about upgrading the lamps, the fixtures, to put LED lights in them with better color control. And light output. That's good. And I saw that for lighting on the chancel, there are lights behind the first archway. And I think I have a picture of that here somewhere.
While we're talking about lights, and Kim, you mentioned about the wavy windows, I think you said. Can you tell us what it's like for a morning service? Where does the sun come through?
The building is oriented, the sanctuary runs almost due north-south. So one side of the sanctuary is on the east, and the other side of the sanctuary, one side of the sanctuary windows is on the east, the other side of the sanctuary windows is on the west.
So am I sort of right to think that during a morning service, literally the sun will hit really nicely, but for people in the room, but it's literally going to be super bright, and it's going to go around
It's bright, but I'll say nothing in that sanctuary falls under the category of super bright. It's always dim in that sanctuary.
So I see this is a picture with the sun. Is this a morning or afternoon picture?
That's a morning picture.
That's a morning picture. And in this picture, it looks like the sun may be coming from the other side.
So that would be an afternoon.
Afternoon picture. All right.
Yeah, so this back wall is facing north.
Oh, okay, great. And so here's a picture of some of the lights on the beam, the first beam, I suppose. That's
Yes, first, and they're on conventional tracks.
But they're not doing a good job of lighting up the pulpit. I heard
They're horrible.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they're horrible.
Okay.
I'm going to bet money that someone screwed par lamps that are floods. You'd be amazed how much more light you can actually get to the pulpit if you swap those out for a narrow beamed spot. You'll get a sufficient circle, but the light will be focused in the beam. And you, as you said, you've got lighting people coming in to rectify a lot of this. But quite often you can solve your problems with good aiming of the instruments and choosing the correct lamp to screw into it. You can get all the way down to about 7-degree beam width, for lack of a better word, bulbs. I know that's the wrong word to use, but you screw in a 7-degree bulb and you can get a lot of light in a very focused area. And you can get different beam widths depending on your needs.
Yeah, so if you wanted to do minimal amount of work to, for lighting new fixtures and stuff, you can get incandescent lamps that could possibly improve the situation. The trick is that they need to be changed quite often, and you have to make sure that you replace the bulb with the same bulb in each different fixture, so that to keep that consistency.
Yeah, I would
However,
advocate for LEDs in these.
But today it's much easier, and it's a worthwhile investment to replace them with LED fixtures. Stage lighting fixtures these days are incredibly flexible and are not very expensive, relatively speaking. They used to be really expensive, but you don't have to change a bulb for like 20,000 hours, and you can get them in white, and you can get them in multicolor, and you can have control over them, and they work really well. I see another bank of light here. This looks like it's for the mural wall.
Yep.
And maybe for the choir area. I suppose that could use upgrading as well. Okay, great. So moving on. So you don't have any screens in the sanctuary now.
We do.
I was looking where I might put a screen. Let me bring up the sanctuary again. So with the organ opening here on the left, you don't have any space to put a screen there. You have this screen space over the doorway on the right. You don't want to do anything in the center to cover up your mural, or the sound coming out of the organ. So a drop screen doesn't seem to be like a good idea. Certainly not anything on the wall. And given the depth of the sanctuary, I think you said it was 80 feet deep. In order for anybody in the back row to be able to read text, that text needs to be a certain minimum size, which means the screen needs to be a certain size. And in this size room, it's going to be quite sizable. So you could have a screen that could, possibly take up quite a bit of this real estate. This would be the place that I would propose putting a screen, and it would probably, given the size that it needs to be, and it could be a direct view like flat screen or an LED screen, but it could also be a projection screen.
Can I ask an interrelated question? On the pews, do you, and we've got to think about where you're going as well, rather than where it is at the moment. Are the pews open at both ends?
Yes.
Yeah, and I assume with where we're probably going to want more mobility and the ability to go to either end, etc. People, I think that's going to be important. The reason I'm asking is down the walls. I think one of the issues I was going to ask, I read in your some really interesting things on the hanging banners. Is that the right term that you use? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you've got hanging banners on all of your, when you decorate the sanctuary all the time with them. So if there was a screen where Marty's talking about, potentially the back rows are not going to see it anyway because of the hanging banners.
Oh, they don't go very low.
No, I think you'd at a minimum have to take down the banner closest to the screen on the right side. I think that definitely would block a screen.
I don't remember them coming down below the pennant lights though. And so that if you look at that image, there, you can be sitting in back, and if you use that closest pendant light as the top of the screen, well, I see a banner that's longer, so I
Exactly. Yeah.
said.
Yeah, no, I could see right here if the person that took this picture moved over to the right,
Exactly.
this banner would block the screen.
Yeah, we'd have to do something.
Yeah, that would have to be shortened or moved elsewhere.
I have wondered if it would be possible to mount a screen that then showed, like maybe a roll-up screen, or so that we could show the mural if we wanted to, or to have a screen in front of the mural and then project an image of the mural over the screen, so that for all intents and purposes, you'd still be seeing the mural.
Yeah, that was my thought as well, to not necessarily rule out covering the mural as long as it was done in a way that is reversible, you know?
The biggest problem with that, it's a great idea. I love the idea, but if you walk up under that arch and look up, you have a crazy ceiling over you, and the mural goes all the way up to the top of it.
Yep.
So putting something up there that you can bring down.
Any projector case would necessarily obscure part of the top of the mural.
Yeah. So it's,
Or you can get an artist in to paint the projector case, the screen case.
I thought you were going to say they could paint over. I thought you were going to say, Mark, they could just paint over the mural with a big roller brush.
Yeah.
You've joked about that.
So I have put up a screen on a back wall like this. It did not have a mural, but they did hang artwork on the wall, and it wasn't quite this big. But what I did was I put up a screen that covered the entire back wall, and it didn't have it wasn't arched, it was rectangular, covered the entire back wall so that you didn't know there was a screen there. And then using projection, they can project art on the wall. They can project anything they want on the wall. So if they wanted to do a scenic, or they want to do a banner, all they need to do is take a good picture of it, and then they could project it on the screen, and it would look to the audience like there was something hanging there.
and it could be this mural.
Could be that mural. However, given the shape of the archway,
The only way I could think to do it was to reverse the problem. Bring it up from the floor. Don't hang it from, bring it up.
Well, that's,
Or a piece of furniture, absolutely.
They make them.
Yeah, they made them.
It can rise up from a piece of furniture.
I mean,
for sure.
there's a really completely mad but idea is reverse the whole room. Because everything you said at the moment is you
Everybody
hate
turn
everything
around.
on that. Everybody turn around and we'll go in the other room.
Right.
Good.
The problem with putting a screen at the back of this chancel, like near the wall, is that the people in the first 5 pews or so who are near the outside won't be able to see it because of the parallax. They won't see around the arches. So the screen
I'm thinking just from an aesthetic standpoint, you also have asymmetry in the space with the organ like that.
the organ, right?
And anything you try and do, it's going to shove the screen off center if you put it anywhere inside the chancel there. From an aesthetic standpoint, I would go all the way to the right and take up that big blank space.
Yeah, I mean, the only place
Do what you
that I
want with that
could-
banner, and just let
The only
the
place on the
screen
chancel
balance
that
the organ
I would put
visually.
a screen would be at the front, right along the front wall, and then, that would cut across the archway. It would look terrible. So I would go back to this area here,
Yeah.
and
You may have
Given-
to tilt the screen because of the first row of pews on the far left.
right. So, but given the ambient light coming through this window, even though it doesn't seem very bright, I would put a special kind of screen up on this wall, and it would need to be positioned and angled just right so that people at both sides of the sanctuary can see it, and people from front to back can see it. So the kind of screen that I'm thinking about is called an ambient light rejection screen. One of the biggest problems with white projection screens is that ambient light from overhead lights, from windows, it just washes out the picture. You lose your color depth, you lose your contrast, you lose your detail, and it looks, it's hard to see. These are screens that are unaffected by ambient light. They only react and reflect light coming from the angle of the projector, which makes them very effective and great to use in high ambient light conditions.
If you couple that with a decent lumens projector, you'll be okay, right? Maybe something over 6,000 lumens, you thinking, Marty? Something...
Yeah, yeah. For this size room and the size of screen that would need it to be viewable for this room, I mean, I'm thinking, it would, I don't know how wide is this wall, but I would take up as much of this wall as possible in width and let the height work itself out to a 16:9 projection system. And it would be kind of catty corner, just a little bit, not 45 degrees. And it would be angled down slightly, and the angle of the projector and the screen would have to be worked out mathematically to make sure that everybody in the room can see it.
Yeah.
And I would use a fixed screen, not one that rolls up and down. And before you hang it, take some very good high-res pictures of that brick wall and then project the brick wall on the screen. Until you put an image that you want out there.
Yeah, you could do a lot of things with projecting, different textures, artwork, whatever on the screen. The natural color of the screen can be anywhere from silver gray to dark gray, almost black.
Is that superior to a flat screen display? I know it can be bigger at reasonable cost, but
I think because it needs to be angled slightly, it's going to have to be, because you can put a flat screen up, but it'll be just that. It'll be a flat screen, and it may not be bright enough to reach the whole sanctuary.
Yeah, the problem with a flat screen that I would think about anyway is it's going to reflect light off that front of that screen, and
it's gigantic and expensive.
Yes, and that's a very large screen that you would need, and I think this is definitely a projector spot with
and we have those beams that we can put a projector on.
Yep. You can mount it from there.
At the right angle.
Exactly.
Well, you can pipe it down from the ceiling. It doesn't have to sit on the beam. Or
as I say, given the angle of the screen, the horizontal angle and the vertical angle, and the precise location of the projector will need to be worked out mathematically to ensure the viewing angle, that everybody gets a good viewing angle.
Of course, there's
all right, and that brings us to the last question that I have, or talking point that I have, is the control desk. So we're talking about the potential for, well, we didn't actually talk about it, but I got the distinct feeling from you, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that given that you've heard us talk about this before, when you're doing streaming, every sound source needs to be well mic'd and well balanced in the mix so that people at home and people who are wearing hearing assistants and the recordings that you do can hear everything and everything well and balanced. That's a lot more complicated or complex than the 3 microphones that you're using now with your tablet, your iPad touchscreen. And so I would recommend a physical mixer, a traditional mixer that would be much easier to control, much easier to understand and much easier to make changes in. Now, your processor will remain very useful for distribution, for loudspeaker control, for protection and such. So I think that's worth keeping.
In addition to that, if you did say something about a simple mode versus a full mode, and with that processor that you have, you can create a simple mode in which you don't even have to turn on your mix desk. You can let the DSP do simple mode stuff, you know, a Pulpit, a couple of other microphones for whatever purpose, and it can be the whole system for really simple stuff. And then on Sundays, flick of a switch, and now the mix desk is providing all of the control for the job.
I think you all just managed to pay for all the time I have spent on this, because things like that reinforce things we were thinking, but it's very important. Doing live mixing control, I've seen really smart volunteers get lost. And
yes,
you need a good graphic panel that's easy to understand. And we can put that in front of that Bose. I love the idea of when somebody just walks in and needs to turn things on, it'll work. They don't have to have that mixer control. We don't want them to touch it anyway. Great.
Excellent point.
And
Yeah.
when you have, instrumental music that's more than piano or organ, you may have guitars, flutes, violins, horns, whatever. You're talking about, a fair number of sources, a fair number of inputs. And, when everything is right there on your mixing desk, easy to see and easy to make adjustments, that makes you a better mixer. It makes your product better. It makes your web stream better. It's just better for everybody. And if rentals are an important part of the church's service to the community, and, weddings and other family events, they may want to bring in live music components, musicians, bands, whatever. And if you're going to be able to offer web streaming as a service to your renters, which I think is really important, that becomes an important component as well.
So can I just ask a question which sort of interrelates to both of those? Marty, is it possible to flip back to the picture where we were looking in the reverse of so we were looking out? That one there, thank you.
That one.
Yeah, so this is the current layout, and really what I'm interested to know from Kim and Nick is the pews that are in place. Are the pews bolted down? Are they a permanent thing? Do you ever remove them, ever move them?
They are bolted down. The chancel as it exists now was expanded maybe 25 years ago. See this
Okay.
across the front? That was an expansion.
Yep. Got you.
The front. And they took out a row of pews when they did that.
Yeah.
And obviously we've had a variety of conversations about post-COVID, might we put in a tech booth in the back and remove a pew, or might we remove some pews in the front so that the choir could have more space on the floor? It's come up. I'd rather not lose seating, because if we're going to be socially distant, we need as much seating as possible. Although I think most of my folks are going to be vaccinated. And, as you know, the CDC just came out with a whole new set of guidelines today.
Right.
And when you were talking about the current location of the DSP, the mixing equipment, where is it on this view that we're looking at?
Can't see it here.
It's off left.
Look
So
toward the chancel.
Okay, so the cabling, sorry, I didn't know if it was one of those back rooms, so I couldn't quite work it out.
No, it's off to the side of the stage.
yep.
Yeah, there's a door on the right side of the stage as you look toward the stage.
Okay, can we
You go
flip
through
back
that
quick?
door.
That'd be stage left, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
I will.
Stage left, there's a door the opposite side from the organ, and back, it's literally straight back there.
And that's where all the cabling. So you mentioned a floor box, and the cabling from that floor box goes to there at the moment.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's where
You said you have access underneath most of the room, or including the chancel, you have access from underneath?
Fellowship Hall runs the entire length of the sanctuary.
Very
So
good.
running cable from this location to the rear of the sanctuary is pretty straightforward.
It would be down there. It's just you have to come through the floor.
Yeah.
And then you've got the aesthetic problem of running the wire up a
Getting
wall.
Yeah, but what I noticed, it looked like, Nick, you've got the floor in. It looks like it's a fairly new parquet floor, or it's been redone. It looked nice.
What is the floor? What is the floor surface now?
Wood.
It's
Yeah,
wood.
it's hardwood.
Okay.
Yeah,
saw
I
the
may. I've
word.
used the word parquet. It probably means it probably doesn't mean anything. It's a type of flooring we have in the UK. It's a block
Yeah,
wood
we have,
floor.
yeah,
Um,
interlocking geometric patterns, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a good picture. Now, when we were looking from the chancel toward the back of the hall,
Mm-hmm.
there was a square gray splotch, and I couldn't make out what that is.
All the way on the back wall.
There, that.
That is the air conditioning.
Say what?
That is the air conditioning unit.
How much noise does that make?
What?
Yeah, we sometimes laughingly refer to it as the Hulk.
Oh my goodness.
It's
The building was built in 1917. It wasn't air conditioned. And so we used to
Right.
close in the summer because St. Louis in the summer is disgusting.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that is the air conditioning for the sanctuary.
How much noise does that make when you're
Doesn't really,
standing in
but-
front of it?
It doesn't make a ton of noise. It's,
Cool.
yeah.
It's great.
air handling is down off to the right of this picture below the floor.
When was
Yeah,
that put in? How many years ago?
Ooh, Claire, were you around when they put it in?
I don't believe so. So it was at least 7 years ago.
It's a while.
Very Godzilla-like, isn't it?
Yeah. I was just going to add that when I've shot video in the sanctuary in the past, I've never had any issues, even,
Hearing it?
camera like right next to it. I don't notice.
When do you
Oh, well,
paint
that's
a
really-
mural on that thing?
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah.
Sound baffles on it.
I
All right. So what we're
yeah.
talking about was, a place to locate a sound mixer and also the video switcher and the computers and the monitors, a control desk. And seems like that would be a very logical place to put it right in front in the middle there. What do you think of that?
Well, when I mentioned that,
Because you have doorways on either side, right?
when I mentioned it to Reverend Kim, there were tears about the pews going.
So to clarify, you can't have it in the middle because that's the walkway there is actually very narrow to the point that when I've been back there just with a camera on a tripod, people are tripping over it. So it would have to be in one of the corners. And as Nick is saying, that would require removing one of the back pews that are against the wall.
And how wide is that wall space between the sidewall and the doorway?
There's enough space right there.
6 feet.
looks like it's 6 feet anyway,
Yeah.
6 or 8 feet.
Yeah, I'd say 6 or 8.
That's not a lot of space because you have to have
A pretty
a
big
minimum of 2 people and you'd want to have as many as 3 and all the equipment.
Oh,
So like the sound mixer can be 18 to 24 inches in width. And then you have, 27-inch computer monitors, 2 or 3 or 4 of them. You need a fair amount of desk space and people need to be able to move in and out.
Now,
Marty,
an estimate of what a good table width would be, for example, 36 inches deep, a table width 8 feet.
It's a little early to say.
Ah,
we need to figure out exactly what equipment is going to be on that table.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
And Marty,
In terms of it's hard to see here, but in terms of the aisle width, depending on how much depth we need for a desk back there and the width, I've seen sanctuaries where the back pews are not quite as long, like they would be shorter pews. The last two pews might be shorter, which kind of creates a funnel for the center aisle.
I don't know if you could put a desk there. If you can tell the air comes out. If you look at the bottom of that case,
Yeah.
that's where the air comes out.
That's where the diffusers are.
Look like the air comes out up top.
There's also vents down there at the bottom.
Probably the
Yeah,
return.
those could be
Might be intake.
returns.
There returns, yeah.
Yeah.
and can I
Well,
ask
no,
a
but
question,
the
Marty?
desk wouldn't be right up against it.
Okay.
Jay,
That would be where you're sitting. You're sitting and looking forward. The desk is in front of you.
Now, Marty, is there a reason for those people to be in the sanctuary? Because
Well,
if you've got good noise canceling headphones on and they're in that, what we call the audio closet, but it's bigger than that. They
So
would,
the thing about mixing audio for a PA system is that you're making critical adjustments for the people in the room. You're making adjustments about EQ, about level, about balance. And it's really difficult to make those decisions and make those critical adjustments if you can't hear exactly what people in the room are hearing. If you're listening to headphones or a different pair of speakers, it's not the same thing.
well, the live stream would be one set of mixes, right?
Correct.
And the room is another. And it seems like if we have maybe one mixer panel, but two places where people have remote control, there would be one in that back pew.
Yep, that's
Very
possible.
old. Making sure sanctuary.
Your point is well taken. You could theoretically take the person that is mixing sound for the stream and video for the stream in another space. I do agree, though, that whoever's mixing for the room should be in the room in a decent listening position. Given the right mixer and the right panel to operate the mixer, that you can reduce the amount of real estate required for that person pretty dramatically. After all, broadcasters who are operating the mix and the video are rarely in the space. They're always in a remote truck or they're in another location. But yeah, for in-room, you'd want them local. So you could, like I say, cutting it back, you could, in theory, have the video and the stream portion of the mixes happening remote.
Yes, there could be two control points, absolutely, and that is really an ideal thing to have.
My vision of this was that mic control, which mics are on, will be done by the live stream people because they're pointing a camera. They've got to turn that mic on, turn that mic on, turn off those others. The person in the back just basically has to keep the levels right coming to that back pew. They don't have to select mics.
That's an interesting question. That's an interesting point.
Yeah, it's a thought.
The advantage that the person in the room has is they have total visibility over everything.
Yep.
They have total visibility over the stage, over the floor. They can see where everything is happening. The people who are just watching cameras can only see where the cameras are pointed. So if the camera isn't pointed at a microphone and somebody steps up to it,
They're done.
You may miss that cue.
You're right.
Right. The other thing about, so you can have two different places where you're doing those two different mixes. That's a very good observation, very good point, and good planning. But unless you have two separate consoles, two separate mixers, if you're going to use one mixer to do those two different mixes, there are certain limitations. EQ and processing of the inputs is one of those limitations. So there's kind of a decision that needs to be made over priority. As I said before, you're making critical decisions that enable people to hear the best sound you can possibly give them. And if you are mixing for stream and for headphones, it's a lot more forgiving because you don't have the room acoustics to deal with. When you have room acoustics to deal with, EQ becomes more critical.
It does. Marty got me thinking this. Now, Marty's had an impact on me that's far and wide. We'll blame you, Marty. Anyway, it seemed to me that the Bose processor ahead of that amplifier, that's the thing that equalizes for the room.
That's
Yeah,
the thing that
except-
equalizes the output of the mixer. So that's the thing that equalizes the loudspeakers
Yes, and
for the room. Yes.
right.
In point of fact, though, and I'm doing this for an outfit in Pennsylvania right now. The DSP is not dedicated to just one thing.
No, it doesn't have to be.
And it doesn't have to be just simple mode versus performance mode. We can actually take feeds from the console and directly from the microphone so that you have independent control within the DSP for the stream. And in theory, the stream's going to be a little bit simpler in some respects because you can take the signals that for performance sake are being delivered by the person mixing in the room and use those signals passing through the DSP to the stream. Another pathway is going to the speakers, and you can also have simple mode stuff. You can have room listening microphones, things like that. The shorter version of this is the DSP can be multi-purposed, and it could act as the mixing desk for the stream while it's also handling a lot of the in-room load in terms of room EQ, delays, things like that. So depending on the number of gazintas and gazoutas the DSP has available, you could, in theory, make a pretty simple mixing location for the stream, especially since the stream has things that in many cases, you're just not going to touch. They're always going to be on.
I've got a couple of last questions I have before we go into the round discussion.
Yep.
Really, they're not things we've touched on. Kim, you talked about the fact that you've done one in the room since lockdown. Then everything's been remote, so everything I assume has been on Zoom. Is the intention to continue once you're back in to also have people involved from Zoom as well, or is it just going to be a one-way stream?
That we haven't decided, but we've been considering the possibility of doing it on Zoom and then having a volunteer who kind of manages the Zoom room with folks. So
Okay.
That's what we're looking at, because people really like the interactive element of it.
Okay, that's what I'm just trying to ask.
At least in the short term, I think even if longer term we move to just a one-way stream, I think we definitely need the capability to initially be continuing the Zoom for folks who are using that.
Maybe I'm oversimplifying again, but it seems to me if you have a first-rate live stream, the Zoom problem becomes easy. It's basically share the video stream, the live stream to everybody and manage the chat room. And the thing
it does. It's whether you think, and Kim, you've already mentioned that you believe that most of your parishioners will be vaccinated, so that you feel that they'll be back in the room rather than being off. And the question is whether you're bringing people in to do special things remotely, if you understand, so that some of the service will be led from or be involved from remote.
That's not something that we have considered.
Well, but joys and concerns, for example, we've discussed that we want the two-way interactivity. So currently we, invite people to share joys and concerns in the chat, and Reverend Kim, reads them aloud, and we've discussed a few things
that could be she's reading from an iPad.
Exactly. So there are lots
not necessarily the cameras coming live. That's what I'm trying to do.
I see.
And the audio is the cameras and the audio. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Right. So again, we've discussed, like, at the time when we greet our neighbors, would we want the Zoom gallery view to show up on that projected screen in the sanctuary? I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting question of whether there's a circumstance we would need audio going both ways, but I think certainly we want the option to do video both ways. I mean,
well, if you had somebody who was scheduled to participate in the service, but couldn't make it to the church,
right,
they could contribute from home.
Right.
In which case you can project them on the screen and then hear them on the speakers, and that could be, announcements. It could be story time. It could be a song.
Could be a guest preacher.
Could be exactly.
Yeah, but the reason I'm asking the question is about how potentially the audio mixer has got to adapt to that environment.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's look at the Q&A before we go into roundtable. I see there are 2 questions so far.
Which one would you like to?
Well, they're related, so let's put up the first one.
You pressed the tick rather than
did?
So I told you would do that.
No! Wait.
Go into archive, and then
I'm looking in archives. I guess this is the only one.
And then there's a little symbol to like a go back, restore.
Oh wait.
That's
There
it.
it is.
And now click on the chevrons.
Oh my goodness.
It's all right.
I thought it's a green check mark. You want to click a green check mark.
I know.
That's to approve it.
I'll just bring that up so that everybody else can see what we're.
So is that it?
It's new technology we're dealing with here today. Very high technology stuff.
And I am failing.
Okay, there you go.
All right. So perhaps regular participants in the Tech Forum already know this, but for others, can you explain why you stated that wireless Wi-Fi speed is not relevant to the capacity for streaming versus hardwired Ethernet connected internet speed? Wi-Fi was never designed to be totally available, totally reliable,
and speedy.
It is a shared resource. And so what happens is, if you could go into an empty room like this and look at your phone and do a speed test and look at the number of bars for your signal strength and write those down. And then come in on Sunday morning when the pews are full and do the same exact tests, and you'll get a very, very wildly different result. In fact, with more people in the room, you will get slower speeds and lower signal strength. And the reason for that is that all of the cell phones in all of those pockets are talking to that Wi-Fi access point. And so all of that bandwidth is being shared. Now, even if they're not logged on to that Wi-Fi point, they're still talking. Wi-Fi access point is talking to all of them. It's negotiating. It's waiting for somebody to say, hey, I want to log on to you. And, and then if you get 3 people who say, yes, I want to log on to you, and the access point negotiates those connections, and now it's sharing its total available bandwidth with now 4 people. And when you're doing streaming, you need an absolutely reliable, consistent bandwidth, availability, and speed. Otherwise, it's not reliable. So wired internet connection, wired LAN, local area network connection to your switch and to your router is going to be the most reliable kind of connection that you'll have. And then in addition to that, that's only the first part, then you need to make sure that, because you're not the only thing that's wired to your network. You have computers in the office. You may have other wired, a laptop on the chancel. Who knows? Every situation is different. You have classrooms that are using internet. The youth group may be using internet. You need to make sure that your network is configured in such a way that your streaming equipment has the highest priority over other traffic, because it is very typical in office environments that some traffic will stop and wait for other traffic to complete, or other traffic that has higher priority. That's why when you call up a web page and it doesn't pop right up, it may be waiting for something else to finish.
Marty, I'm just conscious we got to get on to our other parts.
Right.
And also I was
So
just going to say,
wired
going back to just to go back also very quickly on the wireless part for everybody. When anybody turns around to you and says on Zoom and they're having problems and they say it's my internet, they don't mean it's their internet, they mean it's their Wi-Fi. It is literally every single time when we're talking about wireless, that is the weakest part of all of the chain of broadcasting. Okay, there's another question I think related to it.
And that is, how do you determine what consistent, stable internet upload speed is actually available for streaming, as opposed to the upload speed the local internet service provider says you should be experiencing? That's a good question.
Lie.
Right. So your internet service provider will, tell you that you're buying from them, a certain amount of bandwidth up and a certain amount of bandwidth down. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to always be available to you. That maximum speed will always be available to you. What they're telling you is that is a percentage, usually a higher than average percentage of the time, that will be available to you, but it's not 100% unless you have a business account, in which case you actually are paying for reliable, consistent service. But a home user will never be that reliable.
I mean,
and so,
my typical rule of thumb on it is to go with, if the connection is, if you need 10 meg, you need 20.
Right.
And go something like that. And actually, for streaming, it's the upload, not the download. And the upload, 10 meg and between 10 meg and 20 meg is really, that's sort of, you're not going to, where you're going at the moment, there's other ways to get around it, but you need a consistent speed of somewhere up in that sort of ballpark.
Right. Remember that every Zoom connection is both up and down. So there's your streaming computer, but you also have to anticipate that there may be somebody else or multiple people in the facility using your local area network that could be on Zoom as well. And they're using both upload speeds and download speeds. So there's a calculation to be done, and planning to be done. Is deeper than we can get into here in this conversation, but be aware that that's something that you should do. And another question just came in. What is the best place to put the live stream for access by people at home? Where is the best place to put the live stream for access by people at home? So are you talking about the platform that's used, or?
It's been asked by Nick, who is here. So can you clarify what you mean, Nick?
Yeah, is it Facebook? Is it YouTube?
Okay.
I couldn't figure out the word. Is it a platform you put it on?
It's a destination. It's the destination that you send to.
Right, but there's
the platform. Anybody want to take that?
I have thoughts on that. It depends on your target audience, on your population, and we know where our people are watching, and that has guided,
It also depends on
Sorry,
the level of interaction, the interactivity that you want to provide with your
Right.
audience. That said, there are certain situations where you may want to use two different platforms at the same time.
I think we should part this question only because we want to get on to the round table of this. But we have covered that and can cover it later.
There will be a lot of questions like this, and a lot more detailed questions like what Mark was saying. The capabilities of DSPR. These are deeper questions that will be more appropriate once you get further into the process. They're planning and application questions. So right at this level, what we're discussing is a plan of action for the suite of equipment based on the capabilities that you've told us you want to have, right? So, there are certain things that you may start doing and certain other things that you may end up doing later on. We want to be sure that we're providing you with a suite of equipment with the capabilities to do the things that you eventually are at least considering doing now. And to be sure that you'll have expandability and scalability should you want to go even further later. We don't want to saddle you with equipment that is very limited that won't allow you to grow, right? So that's where we are today.
I have one last question though, if I may.
Sure.
In the documents that you sent to us, you had what looked like budgetary items for the video. No budgetary items were listed for audio, and there's clearly some things that we're going to want to talk about there. Do you have a budget or a budget limit in mind for fluffing up your audio?
It's a good question because we're going to be pinched on budget hard. Mm-hmm. So if we want to live stream, then we're going to have to work the live stream and then look for money for audio later. But you keep bringing up, and I believe it, that you better mic everything in sight, that you're going to have to put good audio to record or stream. We learned that the hard way because we thought we'd been recording things during non-pandemic, and suddenly we're shut down. But somebody who can't sing is in front of the only mic that's open. And mics where you need them. Yes.
Firstly, it's a room mic that has so much background noise that I spent hours trying to filter it, to get something vaguely musical sounding for us to use. So yeah.
I've had that pointer that someone said we never realized what their singing was like until we put a mic in front of them.
The Linda McCartney syndrome.
Okay.
So all of that is to say that our budget is what is listed there.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Given that amount of money, my next question would be, two questions will be, how do you feel about leasing? So, how do you feel about acquiring equipment that you don't necessarily have to pay for in advance?
And we lease some of our office equipment right now, so it would not be unprecedented for us.
The world of AV has been shifting to a.
We'll get there.
AV as a service. So
I know where you're going. We'll get there.
Okay. I think we need to discuss. I think we're running out of time fast.
Yeah.
We need to discuss this rather than opening it wider into
come back
other
to
bits.
that point. I just needed to ask that question as a probing question.
Okay.
All right, panelists. Thank you very much, everybody from St. Louis. The panelists are now going to go into roundtable discussion. So if you could all mute your microphones, that'd be great. What do you think, guys and gals?
Run away.
So my main thoughts really is like whenever you see any of these things, it's the first priority is the cabling and anything that the infrastructure that needs to sit underneath it. And to me, that's the one area that I'm sitting there thinking that the cabling, and they've already said that they can get cabling under the floor. It's there. The fact where the equipment currently sits, it almost seems to be, and I would be looking at this and say, you need new speakers and new speaker locations. You're going to need to put in cameras and different camera locations. You're going to put in other things and screens and other locations. It's almost like, do you start with where am I going to bring this all back to? And do I bring it back to somewhere that isn't where it currently is? Because the restriction of where it's sitting at the moment and the fact that there's no visual sight lines from where it's sitting at the moment makes it quite hard to and if you're running, it's just, or there's literally, you're going to be left with, and they also said they've got to bring in new internet cables.
I don't know. To me, the gear seems to be in a decent location because the amount of stuff you're going to have to mount remote to it is not actually that hard to get to. I can imagine how they can get up to the beams in the ceiling discreetly from a couple of locations. I don't think they've got particular limits on lengths in any of the places. I think they're going to be able to reuse their speakers as monitors in the chancel once they replace the speakers that are out in the sanctuary, because they're basically made for that kind of stuff. The horns can rotate so they can get the pattern, a pattern that's more desirable from them.
Jay, do you think that the speakers definitely need to be replaced?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Oh, God, yeah.
Without a doubt. It's your single biggest impediment. Well, it's I don't know if I'd say that along with acoustics are huge impediments. There are a couple of things that occurred to me that in looking at the DSP schematic, I don't have that in front of me, but one thing I noticed, there was an absence of any signal processing between the microphone inputs in the mixer. No low pass or high pass filters, no equalizers, no limiters. There's nothing there to process the microphone signals. So, you know, at the very least, I think with some programming work, you could make some improvements to what's coming from the microphones or what you're doing with, oh yeah, good, thanks.
There we go.
Yeah, let me look at that in a large, because coming up tiled and go to, yeah.
Well, you know, maybe I can put a pin in this because if we're going to move to a physical mixer, this is going to be completely redone.
Well, understood. I get that. If you're going to move to a physical mixer, that's going to be completely redone. But when you talk about, well, we're using feedback suppressors to fix a problem, and you're not fixing the problem, at least starting in the right place, which is gain staging, high pass filter, equalizers on each of the microphones, because you want to precondition those mics rather than trying to fix everything with a blunt instrument, and the blunt instrument is a graphic equalizer and a feedback suppressor. So now fixing this doesn't fix your very low Q loudspeakers that have absolutely no low frequency directivity control in a sanctuary. That I'll tell you what I'd love. I would love if you could record a balloon pop. I would love an impulse response of that sanctuary, so I could come back and stick it in my analyzer and have a look at it. Because we're at a really disadvantage when we try to diagnose a room from afar. We're not in there listening to it. We're not making measurements of it. So we're in an ambiguous place in terms of what you're experiencing in the room. But so the mixing console would certainly give you the front end processing to properly condition the microphones. And in fact, I don't think there's an issue if you have a digital mixer. You could always, somebody could sit in the room and mix front of house PA. Somebody could use an iPad or a computer in another location and create a separate mix for a streaming feed. So you could do this with one device.
So the point that you've said there, what I don't understand is whether you would want to keep the DSP at all. I'm hearing that Mark's saying it could be fixed. I'm hearing Marty and Jay saying, well, you need to put a mixer on the front of it. And if you put a mixer on the front of it, is it going to be doing anything but powering the amplifier, the speakers?
Well, the other thing we don't know about, there's DSP in the power amplifier. So there may be a whole nother segment of signal processing going on in those speakers. I don't know what it is because we're not looking in the amplifier processor. So we're really kind of in the dark entirely into what's happening in DSP, and what's happening in DSP affects the output that goes everywhere.
I hope I wasn't implying that we could fix things with the DSP.
You could certainly make what you have better if you make some improvements to it.
Yeah, but I think we're all, unless I'm really, really misreading the room, I think we're all saying that the solution to this is going to have to be some sort of mixer to take over and do it. Particularly when you're then saying that you need to have different mixes going out to the stream, etc. And then that's why I came to the thought of like, you've got to put in a new mixer, you've got to put in new speakers because everybody says that, and they've got to be in different physical locations. Am I right?
So that was, I was going to reframe my question to Jay and say, if you had that space, what speakers would you choose, how many, and where would you put them?
Well,
Not
that's
to
a
put any
difficult
pressure.
question to ask right now without more information about the acoustics.
Yeah.
And right now there's
Well,
only four,
yes, it is, and it isn't.
Are they only four? There's only four right now, correct?
Well, there are
only
two
two.
speakers covering the sanctuary. So there, in fact, there's one because the other speaker's turned off, right?
There's only one.
Right.
Yeah. There's one double 8-inch small format loudspeaker covering the entire sanctuary.
Okay.
So given
it
the
would likely
dimensions
be
of the room and the wall surfaces of the room,
I realize it's a tough question. I'm just saying that. So if we're not thinking, but we might be thinking about quantity four.
No, I'm not even thinking. So there are a couple things going on here. One is you don't want to put energy on that back wall only to have it come back up and essentially be a problem for everybody in the sanctuary. You really want to make sure the energy is going to the floor and it's not going to the back wall. It's not going to the ceiling. If you could certainly go to the ceiling and again use loudspeakers, ceiling mounted loudspeakers, you would probably end up using something larger, horn loaded or line array type speaker. It's not going to be insubstantial if you want to get the control and keep the energy down on the floor of the sanctuary. Alternately, you could use like a steerable column that on the main wall, and it might be a left and a right, and if you have something tall, you get low frequency directivity control, and if it's steerable, you put the energy onto the floor and steering it off of the back wall. That's my initial thought. It's not an inexpensive way to do things, but just off the top of my head, that you really got to keep it off the wall.
Okay, I think we could.
that was my thought, was steerable column arrays. Given the height of the ceiling and the fact that there's, we have these beams, but unless you wanted to do a highly directive series of loudspeakers from front to back that are pointed down, steerable arrays on these two columns right here would give us the ability to direct sound from the front pew to the back pew and keep the reflections off the ceilings and off the sidewalls. That would have been my first thought. But getting back to what Leo was asking, just thinking about good engineering design practice for an environment like this, and given this kind of application, my inclination would be for a physical, traditional digital mixer that can be augmented by the DSP for various applications, for output control, for speaker management, can be used for simple mode like Mark was saying, and can do a variety of other things. Those other things, though, would be for a later conversation. The digital mixer can handle, in addition to conditioning each of the inputs, would also handle some of the routing. So as we've talked about on prior shows, we're doing multiple mixes. We're doing a mix for the room. We're doing a mix for Zoom. And we're doing a mix for overflow and recording, which are three different mixes. That needs to be handled in the mixer. And the DSP can also then handle management for distribution through the rest of the facility, including volume control at each of the destinations.
Okay, Marty, I think we need to move off the mixer and that side, because
I'm answering the question that was, and it was a very good question to ask. Is, we're talking about how to engineer a system here, and that's, this is a very foundational question. So that's the way that at least I'm thinking about that.
Okay.
Do you want to move on to cameras, Leo?
Yeah, I think otherwise we've
So
got to
moving
keep
on
to
to
each of the
cameras.
next slots. Yeah.
Right. Moving on to cameras. So I would think about in the sanctuary itself, I might consider a camera on each of the side walls, a camera on the back wall with a long lens, only because there isn't any place closer to put a center camera. They asked for a camera for the organist, and I think that's a really good idea. And the one I would recommend for that would be, this is a very small camera. We referred to it as a POV camera, a point of view camera. This camera is like 2.5 inches cubed and can have interchangeable lenses, so you can select a lens that fits the framing that you want. It's about a $500 camera, and it can come with.
Can you put that on a tripod, or do you have to mount it?
Oh, this would be mounted.
Okay.
I mean, you could put it on a tripod, but for this application, so that the people at home and in the sanctuary can actually see the organ player, the person who's playing the organ, even use it for the piano player, music director. These are things that are easy to mount and hide, so they're not huge. They don't get in the way. It's a $500 camera, so it's very affordable.
That's great. So and then for the main sanctuary, looking back, you're talking about PTZ sort of cameras. Is that your thoughts?
I would for the side cameras, I would recommend pan-tilt zoom cameras for the two sidewalls, and you could do a pan-tilt zoom for the back camera, but you could just as easily do a fixed box camera that would have a fixed view of the chancel.
That's quite a big distance.
It is.
For most cameras. I mean, if you compare that to Rob's own sanctuary that we looked at a couple of weeks ago, I'm going to say it's about double the length of yours, Rob, at a give or take. And your cameras are on your beams, your second beams. Is that right?
80 feet, right? 80 feet front to back. Are you 40 feet, Rob?
About 45 to 50 feet. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Rob put his cameras on some beams. I think the first or second beam, wasn't it, Rob? So we're just trying to think about the it is quite a long, and from my experience, without going super expensive, I think 30 times zoom is about the most I've seen from the cheapish style PTZ cameras.
Right. So with cameras on the sidewalls, they can be, depending on how far they are from the front, they can be 20 times to 30 times. So that would depend on how far back in the room they are and how tight you want to be able to get a zoom shot. What I was saying for the back wall is, you could put a pan-tilt zoom with a 30 times pan-tilt zoom camera, motorized camera with a 30 times zoom on the back wall. And that would give you the ability to like get a sweeping pan view from the back of the sanctuary, see all of the pews. You get a lot of flexibility, and you could do that. But if we were talking about, saving every penny that we can, a box camera like this has a 30 times zoom on it and can be mounted on the back wall and just get a static tight shot of the chancel, maybe even the podium, the pulpit podium. And then, that would be the camera that you would use for your sermon and use for that steady shot that would be in between the shots you would take from the pan-tilt zoom cameras.
Okay. So the other suggestions I had or thoughts of were the fact they've got those hanging banners is to potentially use the hanging banners to hide put the cameras on the pulpit side of the hanging banner, so from the ceiling, so you could put a PTZ camera there, so you could be much closer without it being too intrusive a view that everybody sees because the banners are there. If that makes sense.
That's a possibility.
Yeah, you could even pipe down to behind the big banner if you wanted to get a lower angle shot.
And when we get on to maybe the projector and how you were talking about the projector, you would need to do something similar with the projector. So it may be that you become quite creative in a couple of the banner locations to match that they hide. So yeah, it'll be one of those things that nobody knew where the camera was, and they go up and look back, and it's like they can see everything, see behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, pan-tilt zoom camera is like 6 to 8 inches in diameter, depending on the model. So they're not huge, but they're not insignificant either. And they come in, a couple of different shapes. This has the camera body is gimbaled in the center. Sometimes they look like a pod with a cowl that goes over the top of it. I don't know if there's one here.
As long as they're not moving, they become almost invisible. As soon as they move, every eye in the house is going to catch it and look up. So yeah, I love the banner idea to kind of mask them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a good idea. And they would be mounted, they would be brackets that would permanently mount them to the brick wall.
Okay.
Now,
and again, with the cameras and with projector as well, but the same thing when we were talking earlier, we talked about the cabling. All of that will need to have new cabling to run to somewhere, and where that somewhere is it where it is at the moment, in the convenience, or is it at the back of the room?
right. So we talked about I think we talked enough about lighting. Unless there are any questions about that. I think we talked enough about the screen and the projector, at least till this point, until we can get to actually take some measurements. So that brings us down to the control desk. And just to riff off of what Leo was just saying. So thinking about the package of equipment and wiring and where things need to go to and come from, we'll have this control desk somewhere in the back of the room that will have the audio mixer. There will be some sort of wire that goes from the audio mixer to the stage to carry all the microphones back, and that will probably be no more than a Cat5 cable or something similar. Output of the mixer will go to a variety of places. It'll go to the computer that's sitting there for streaming. It'll go to the rack in the front of the room off the chancel for the power amps and for potentially for distribution to other parts of the facility. There will be the computer for streaming, the computer for camera control. So all of the cameras will go back to that point. There will be output from there to the projector. So that's a wire that will need to go between those 2 points. There'll be the internet connection with a switch to provide network access to all this equipment. What else will there be at that point?
So I think the other things that you maybe need to think about, not necessarily install initially, but it will be convenience or comfort monitoring from the video perspective for the people up there, so they can actually see what's on the screen, maybe a smaller screen in that respect. If you're running Cat6 cabling from the back of there to the pulpit, then you may want to put in so that you could either put a little screen or have the cabling capacity to put a small screen on the pulpit itself so they can look at it, or it could be that they would want a stream deck up there. I know that Mark and I are fans of the stream deck, so that they could actually control, Kim could sit there and actually move the slides of any presentation she's doing, and straight from there rather than having to say next please. They're all the sort of things that I could see the need for that. Not at the beginning, but it's one of those, if the floors are up or the ceiling is down from the floor below, it's like, dragging extra Cat6 cables. Would you suggest then for the microphones to put a stage box in there and bring that back to the mixer?
Yeah, there would be some kind of a stage box.
Okay.
With a
There's already one. There's a floor box in place. They could, if they're so inclined, they can hide something in behind the organ. They could cut in another floor box. They could. It looks like they've got options for where they could park access points for microphones.
Okay.
Right.
So then and I suppose it's an aesthetic issue that we can't really solve, is where does that all go back to? Where is that control desk?
We haven't determined exactly how many inputs to plan for. That's part of the next conversation that would be had. How many inputs to plan for? How many outputs would be needed? How many floor monitors would be needed? There's a monitor for the choir. There's a monitor for the organist. There's a monitor for the pianist. Floor monitors for musicians. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not saying they need all of these. I'm saying those are potentials.
But, Marty, can they all run off the stage box? If you with the Cat6, the one Cat6 from the mixer to the stage box then can take over all of those from that point.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
It's possible, but they're so close to the rack. Discrete wiring would not be a big issue and is a whole lot cheaper than a digital stage box.
Well, remember that it's coming from the mixer in the back of the room.
Not necessarily.
You're talking about keeping the rack up front?
All of the stage monitors would be routed through the mixer at the back of the room.
Right.
Unless we start talking about a rack version of like a Behringer with remote mixing from the back, but we put the rack in the keep it up in the up next to the chancel.
But whether it be a rack mixer or a physical mixer in the back of the room, the only wiring that goes to the back of the room is the Cat5, the stage box that's connected to that mixer would be on stage or in the rack.
But my point is, instead of using a mixer and a stage box,
Yeah.
if you use one of the rack mixers, discrete wire to the rack mixer, and then, okay, you got a cat cable going to the back for a control surface.
That's possible.
Because you know, a digital snake is about another $1,000 and they're already strapped.
No. Well, depending on the mixer, yeah, you know, a stage box, you know, does add to it, but it's so that would be a conversation about operational preference. Because
Sure.
because you'd be mixing off of a computer or a computer screen rather than a physical mixer. So that's another conversation. That's an option. Yes, that's an option. Would be
There are
less
Hueys that they
expensive.
can use as well.
There are.
But
And
at
so
that point, at that point, we're talking about the equivalent of a snake in cost to buy a Huey. So
right.
Mark.
So that's
Yeah.
another
You know what a
conversation,
Huey is?
but that's an option.
Huey is a human user interface. It's basically a mixed surface that doesn't have any real electronics behind it. It's just a way to tell the mixer what to do.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Hmm.
So control
then
desk. So the control desk would have, you know, a suite of equipment, some sort of a mixing board, a couple of computers, several video monitors, and wiring to these different points, wiring to projector, wiring to the stage for microphone, wiring to stage for amplifiers and speakers.
And the
All
cameras.
right.
I'm going to break protocol here. Nick, do you guys have like an old analog mixer sitting around anywhere?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
And to the cameras too, Marty, right?
And then,
And the cameras.
Something that Leo touched on that we hadn't talked about before is automation and control. Which
Other
is
than a
something
Stream
that we would put in our recommendations that would help simplify the operation of all this equipment.
Something other than a Stream Deck?
No, it could be a Stream Deck. It could be a number of different things.
Or it could be a Stream Deck.
It's just
Yeah, no,
just-
yeah,
Or
absolutely
it could be
Stream Deck.
reprogramming the DSP and using the existing control surface that they have for the Bose DSP to do some simple functions. But
that's a
yeah,
possibility.
I think there's some rethinking that has to be done around the DSP and its purpose and what to do with, you know, it may. I find that quite often the difference between a good system and a bad system is the programming of the system, that the gear isn't necessarily the problem as much as who put it together and who was thinking through how to operate that system. Right down to if that Bose control panel is confusing to people, maybe it's just not being used for the right things, and that's what's causing the confusion. So I would want to look deeper into the DSP and specifically that little control panel and think up what the use case would be for it.
Right. So the last thing that we need to get to that's going to be really important. So, you know, we've gone through all the items. We've discussed what needs to be added to the system, what needs to be upgraded in the system. And, you know, I'm doing some rough calculations in my head. The amount of money that they have told us they have budgeted for this is clearly not going to be enough.
it's 10,000. I added up their list. Looks like 10,000 to me.
10,000 for what?
Well, what they
All the
what they
video gear that
all the
and they
stuff
said that was
they-
their budget.
put into their paperwork is $10,000.
Now, there's two parts of that. There was a grant set aside for the hybrid/streaming software, another
Yeah.
$3,500 for incidentals. The $3,500 for incidentals is going to get soaked really quickly by cabling and install. But I'm not
I
sure
don't
they
think they
need
need
necessarily any
$1,000 for
software.
streaming software.
All right. Well,
Right.
let me ask this
No.
question.
They don't.
So in your paperwork, Nick, you gave us sort of a budget, a broken down budget for cameras, for projection, for, you know, various things. How did you arrive at those numbers?
Uninformed of the internet.
All right, so they were a guess. Okay,
They are a complete guess. There's no
okay,
doubt
that's
about it.
great. No, just wanted to know that.
And so hopefully the sites that I settled on were reasonably informed that that's a good camera, but you'll notice that it was philosophically different. It was take the back pew out. It was put 2 tripods in there.
Yeah, it was tripods in that mount.
Right.
And almost complete manual control from 2 people in the back of the sanctuary. Hopefully with earphones on, but nonetheless, as it became obvious that we were looking toward the future to do this well, then Claire referred to it as scope creep.
Yep.
When you start talking about PZTs, it becomes more expensive. It just does. And you have to have it controlled. Anyway, so yes.
Which is one of the reasons why I opened this conversation the way I did, by establishing your criteria, your needs, the basis for why you're doing live streaming, how important live streaming is going to be to the church. That sets up, to me, that sets up my frame of reference for what quality and type of equipment that you really should be looking at to accomplish your goals, right? So, there are really inexpensive cameras out there. I don't think that's what would cut it for you. I don't think that's going to give you the results that you would really want to have. And we talk a lot about the difference and the distinction between entry-level buying to get started and then upgrading later actually costs you way more money than buying the proper stuff the first time. As much as it might hurt, there are ways of doing it, and that trying to get into it cheap costs more. Getting into the right stuff the first time, we say buy once, cry once, and it will serve you for a long period of time, and you won't have to worry about upgrading, in a year or 6 months or 2 years or whatever. So budget becomes the next conversation. Most churches are just very accustomed to the notion that, well, we have to buy this stuff, right? Give us a list and, we'll figure out, well, we have to raise the money. We have to do a capital campaign. That's not necessarily true, right? I asked early on about the sensitivity to leasing, and Reverend Kim mentioned that you're already doing some leasing for like office equipment. It's very common for the copier to be a leased product. And so that becomes an option. There's another option that sounds like leasing, almost sounds like renting, that was it Mark or Leo or Jay mentioned, and it was Mark. There's a new type of method of acquisition for technology that is being referred to as a service, technology as a service. And what really comes down to this. The value of all of this technology is not in owning it. The value is having access to it for you to use, right? And think about the rate of technology improvements, how fast things are changing, how fast new technology, new equipment, new models, new features are hitting the market. It's like almost quarterly we're hearing about major advances in technology. Look at Apple's rate of new product introductions. Every year they've got the greatest new thing that has ever come out. And so not that everybody has to be early adopters, But what that means is that the value, the cash basis value of technology rapidly depreciates, rapidly decreases, because it's no longer the greatest thing. In fact, it may be replaced by something that is so much better, so much sooner, that it becomes relatively, loses its value very quickly. So technology as a service gives you the ability to acquire this equipment. You don't have to pay for it in advance. In fact, there could be no upfront cost whatsoever. You pay a consistent monthly fee. There's no interest rates, no adjustments. You pay a monthly fee to use the equipment for a 5-year period. And at the end of the period, you can toss it all out and upgrade it, or you can upgrade parts of it. You can continue to use what you have. Anytime in between the start of the term and the end of the term, if you find that something that you have isn't quite the right piece, you need to upgrade it, you can have it upgraded without any penalty costs. There's no prepayment costs, there's none of that. So you're paying a monthly fee to use the equipment, and the equipment that you're using can always be up to date as you want it to be. So the value is in the access to the equipment to use. And ownership is pretty immaterial. Ownership really doesn't do anything for you. It's having access to it that's important. So,
incidentally, because you're signing a contract with them for a guaranteed level of service, if a piece of equipment breaks, it's up to them as the provider of the equipment to just come in and either repair it or replace it. And that's part of the terms of the contract that you sign.
Right.
AV as a service has been a buzzword for about the past 3 years in the AV industry, and it's gaining a certain amount of steam. You're seeing more and more integrators buying into the idea of AV as a service because it actually pays off for them as well. So you might look into finding an integrator in your area that is engaged in AV as a service as part of their offerings.
I'm sorry to break protocol for a minute, but when you talk about leasing stuff, and we have a 100-year-old church and you have to drill holes through floors, there's an install that probably doesn't come as part of the service, I would imagine.
May or may not, depending on how they quote it out. They might make the lease terms such that they amortize the install across the term of the lease.
Yeah, so I love this idea. I just love it. I really do. And possibly what we do is we install relatively future-proof in terms of 3PZTs and this and that, Cat5T. The labor's not. I just got a proposal in, and I haven't shared this with Reverend Kim, and there's $12,500 worth of just put the wires in.
That's right.
And put a network box. Holy cats, look at our budget relative to that number by itself. They explained to me it's hard. It's going to take people doing special things to make this look nice in your beautiful church. I understand it. I've heard it from enough of them now to believe it. But that might be, we devote our money to the extent we can to doing a really good install and then take off leasing.
So integrators work with there are a number of financing companies that offer this AV as a service. It's coming from a financing company and it's coming through the integrator that does the work. So depending on the financing company, whether the installation can be bundled into the package or not, can change.
Yeah.
There are additional benefits to this also, as a matter of fact. So at some point, you had some integrator come in and install the equipment that you have now, right? And you remember how long ago that was?
Oh, for Bose, for the Bose sound system? Yeah. And I've talked with them. They don't do audio or video.
When was the last time they came into your sanctuary to maintain that Bose system?
Oh, they it's funny. They claimed no knowledge about it.
All right.
And
So
so,
one of the biggest complaints that I hear from churches is, they'll have an integrator come in and install the equipment, and then once the equipment is installed, they disappear, and they can't get them to come in for service. They can't get them to come in for training. It's done, and they're gone.
well, that's where we are on this one. It's a sad story.
So with this kind of acquisition method, the service contract is actually built into the monthly fee. And so you have the benefit of establishing a long-term relationship with your integrator.
Yeah, and as you said, if a piece of equipment fails, it's their problem to make it work.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you don't have a lease or a contract. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, the service agreement is an option. I mean, it's up to the integrator to build it in. They don't have to build it in. It's to their benefit to build it in.
Well,
it's to your benefit
they're
to
almost
build it in.
required to build it in because you are paying for access to the gear, the use of the gear. And if the gear doesn't work, then you don't owe them any money. So it is in their best interest to be constantly checking on the gear and servicing it. The other benefit that integrators recognize is that it forms what they call sticky relationships. You end up married to them for a certain amount of time, and that means you're guaranteed to be their customer. And anytime you think of anything that you need, well, let's call the guys we're leasing the gear from.
Yeah.
So they like these sticky relationships, especially with the end users.
Mm-hmm. So there's all of that, makes it a very attractive means of acquiring all this equipment that you need, and, it enables you to buy more than you could afford if you were buying it outright.
And in a short term.
In a shorter period of time.
Have opened a whole new world to us. Seriously. The heavens just opened. Angels came forth. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Any other questions? Anybody? And as a matter of fact, it is time check 9:34.
Open mic time.
So what I'm going to do is say thank you to everybody tonight. And let's take our final poll, okay, shall we? Joanna, there was one more question.
Yes. Was it about Slido?
It was. Is. Will be.
There you go.
All right. How much did you enjoy using Slido at this event? Did you think it was a worthwhile experiment? Did it add anything? Was it easier, better than using Discord for Q&A? Love to know what you think about it. So let us know.
Q&A.
And while you're doing that, I'll say thank you to our panelists and our guests for such a wonderful conversation today. We hope you've enjoyed our time together, and perhaps you found it informative, enlightening, enriching, and energizing and motivating. Let's do this. Watch the Discord for agendas for upcoming shows, where you can find recordings of past shows to review. They're on YouTube. So you can see them on YouTube. However, there's a benefit to being a registered attendee, is that the latest 3 shows are always reserved for registered attendees, and links to those will be found on the Discord. So, for most of our churches, this is new ground that we're covering, to do live webcasting from the sanctuary, and we've seen, we've perceived many, many benefits to doing this, and many benefits to doing it well. If you're going to do something, there is no point in not doing it well. So, you're reaching a whole new group of people. And once you're out there, anybody, anywhere can tune into your service and join your congregation. Think about that, right? So you want to reach people and you want to invite them in. So do this in such a way that you're inviting people in. Thank you very much. So let's see. So for, I'm not sure if we've picked next week we're going to be presenting the results from the Georgia assessment. That's what we're going to be doing next week for the first part, and the second part is going to be a surprise. So tune in and, watch for the emails, tune into Discord, watch our Facebook groups. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all then.